Hi, my name is Winsley, and welcome to my video discussing the 10th Dev Diary for Age of Wonders 4. This one is covering heroes, which act as warriors, governors, and story characters. This one did take me a little bit longer to read through. I think it's a pretty extensive Dev Diary, filled with a lot of really interesting information. Um, this starts off with just like a basic summary of what we're going to be looking at today, how like heroes act as army leaders. They get these magical items from the quests they go on. They can be city governors, which we haven't seen a lot of before this Dev Diary. And they go through ancient wonders. They act as besiegers, which is really interesting. We haven't heard before that sieges can only be started by a hero. That's going to really limit the amount of sieges you can actually participate in, and it's going to mean that the where you send your heroes is going to really is going to be a lot more important for waging war purposes. They also act as outpost founders. When you go to a location that you want to create a city, you may want to use an outpost first. I think you may actually need an outpost before you can make a city. I know they did that in the stream earlier today, but I missed the first half because it started like at 6 a.m. or something like that. So there is more information on there out there if you're interested in that. I'll be doing a little summary of that video on Tuesday next week with a bunch of screenshots from all throughout. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, keep an eye out for that. Um, Next thing I wanted to talk about is how you typically will have a city cap. They mentioned that, or not a city cap, a hero cap, and that having more cities will allow you to have more heroes. So I think if you have 5 cities, you can have 5 heroes. A pretty interesting way of structuring that. Um, they also went over how the ways to recruit heroes can be through either the independent cities or through your own starting city. Essentially, the ones that you get from your own starting city will be slightly weaker, and the ones that you get from independent cities will be slightly stronger, kind of incentivizing you to be a little bit friendly with at least one or two of these independent cities. I really like that when you recruit a hero, you get a couple choices. It was kind of annoying in Age of Wonders Planetfall, and I think Age of Wonders 3 when you were just given a hero and said, "Do you want to keep this one, or would you like to take a chance to generate one that you think is better?" Um, so they come with these different little traits. This one in the middle is a spell thief. There's a specialist engineer, a demolitionist, and it looks like something about is that plague bearer. We saw something that allowed them to recruit troll units. There was something that allowed them to summon some kind of demolishing sphere. I think that's the demolitionist trait right there. And there's something that had to do with base beast units, and another thing that gave you, I think, more flanking damage if the hero was flanking a unit. So I like that a lot. I think that's going to be a really neat, fun change from previous entries into Age of Wonders. There's another note in this little blurb right at the end that mentions that you can get Pantheon rulers that may show up and join your playthrough, which will be pretty unique because those are events that need to be written pretty generally, but it's gonna feel really customized to your Pantheon, your experience in the Age of Wonders universe, because that's something that you've created previously. And a Pantheon ruler is something that you used in one of the previous maps. Um, I think there may have been one or two more things I wanted to mention from this before moving on. Took a couple notes. Um, you can always recruit heroes later. Yes, I think that was mentioned around here. If you don't like a hero, you can say, I'd like to try and recruit you at a later point. Yeah, this is where they mention it. There's always an option to recruit them later. It will either be free, like they were going to be free, or reduced cost, depending on your history with them. I guess if you put it off, the cost will go down over time, which is nice. Sometimes it's just way too expensive and you can't afford a hero, even though they're pretty good. Um, After that, we have something about the starting traits and free cities. They get more quests or different results depending on if they're from a free city or if they're from your own nation. They also fit into some different like archetypes, things like battle mages, I think, and um, warlords. This guy, Ergot Warbuck, he starts off with some pretty simple stuff, um, and then eventually gets all these little neat, looks like fire evokers, lightning evokers, a lot of mage centric things. So this guy was built to be kind of like a mage hero. And then this unit down here, they start off with a lightning strike, looks like a little sword. And then when they upgrade, they have charge spider web. This guy seems more like a melee or physical based unit, maybe a, a warlord or something like that. Who knows? It could be that these guys are like mixtures of governors and battle mage or warlord, but we don't really have enough information to know that. Um, there's also something in here about how these guys are from, I think, an independent city, and as they level up, so do their units. This stack has a bunch of lower tier units with no experience. I think the experience is like a little gray banner in the bottom right of their thing, and then it turns to a little like bluish silver banner if they get some experience. And I think they turn into better units. So, if you give these independent city heroes enough time, they get to be pretty strong, pretty interesting. Um, Next, we have some of the starting traits that you can get on your guys. They actually jump into a little bit more detail here. This one in particular gives more draft income if they're in charge of a city. So some of these traits are for combat, and some of them are for governors. And I think there's another application of these, or another category of these starting traits outside of those two that I'm just forgetting off the top of my head. Um, Yes, there's something about a support skill that allows you to. Okay, yeah, I think we're getting there. I think that's coming up, um, where you can like reset action points. Very strong. So during your time in Age of Wonder Force, you're gonna get, yeah, the two types of heroes that we talked about. Some of them are gonna be higher level and have different quests essentially related to them. So if you want to have a different experience, just go for a different type of hero. If you've been having free city heroes a lot, then try the ones that come out of your city to get or your capital city to get different event chains. Um, let's see. Yes, once you have them, I think there's a relationship better, making that so that the free cities have more powerful upgrades, and those things can apply to the hero, things like transformations and enchantments. Whereas the ones that come from just your main capital city, they'll have whatever you've cast on them. Yeah, the unaffiliated heroes are kind of like your capital city heroes that I was just talking about. Um, yeah, unique storylines and quest events. And yeah, this is the hero cap thing that we talked about earlier. If you've got more than one city, you can have more than one hero. But if you do go over it, the cap isn't like a hard cap; it's a soft cap where there's a penalty. I think I saw in previous versions of the game it was like minus 25% gold income, which probably isn't bad if you got a bunch of mana units. Like you can just go for mana and ignore that if it's a percentage penalty. But if it's a cost of 30 gold, I think that actually will end up adding up to something. I'm not sure what happens when you go negative in gold, but it might lead to desertion or something else that's like really like not great for your empire. But yeah, I do think that that's interesting. I'm not sure 30 gold is enough to discourage people. Some people get like 5,000 or so energy in Planetfall, and I think it's easier to get gold in Age of Wonders 4. So it could be that maybe that cost should scale. Maybe it does scale based on where you are in the game. That would make a lot of sense. Next, they bring up the hero editor. So if you don't like the design of any of your heroes, you can go into this page and change their appearance. Maybe give them a different helmet, a different cape, something along those lines. And if you don't like what you come up with, you can reset it, I think, as many times as you want. There is something in here about respecking your heroes, which is similar. It's going to be free the first time, but then I think after that it costs Imperium, which is pretty interesting because I could see a lot of people essentially abusing that mechanic to go from one build to another and then respecking right before they go into a fight against somebody else who's been like expecting them to be a certain type of hero and has built a bunch of units to counter that. Um, Not sure if I'm a fan of that yet, but it sounds neat for specifically single players, people who don't do multiplayer, who don't have to worry about a human taking advantage of that too much or abusing it maybe. Um, we have regular skills, which are divided into the three categories of warfare, battle magic, and support. Warfare will make your unit better at fighting. Battle magic will make it better at like dealing magic damage or those types of effects. And then support will be more about, I think, upgrading the units in an army. They'll have more general effects for everybody who's being led by this hero unit. Um, Warfare, physical damage, battle magic is yeah, just if you like magic in general, use it. It helps you with spell usage and increasing status resistance. Um, I think we can move on to signature skills, which has a pretty interesting interaction with the what do you call them? These heroes that you're hiring. If it was on your main commander, what happens is it allows you to unlock different tomes or empire skills. But if it's on a hero, what that ends up translating into is extra resources when you're a governor. I think we'll come up to respecialization in a second. I think they show off the income for, yes, this hero right here is 2 food and I think 6 draft. The thing that lets you get more units, I believe. It could be that's production. Anyways, the food is coming from the nature affinity and the production is coming from the I think that's the chaos affinity right there. Pretty good stuff. I like that. I think that's going to make it so that your choices of affinity really do matter. It's not just going to be like, okay, this guy's kind of like my hero, so they get along. There's just like an extra layer to it. Um, so yeah, we were going to talk about respecking next. This is the part where they mention how you can reset all of your regular skills and your signature skills, but it's gonna cost you Imperium if you do it multiple times. After that is just like hero items. We've seen things like this in previous Age of Wonders games. You got your primary slot, your secondary slot, the head, torso, legs, rings, miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is going to be like all kinds of different effects. So there's a lot of really interesting interactions with that. But like the tier 4 weapons, they also do some pretty cool stuff as well as like the shields, which we're going to take a look at in a second. My favorite one is the mounts. The mounts are pretty interesting. Being able to increase how far a hero can move is really, really helpful. And giving them some extra like abilities on top of that is pretty cool as well. So the Gilded Shield will make it so units become gilded. I think that's kind of like the mythic unit turning people into a gold statue. I could be wrong. Maybe it makes it so like you get gold when you kill them. Who knows? Could be both. This seems like a reference to a character from a previous game. I think Milenis was in Age of Wonders 3, but I could be wrong. Seems like a villain. This turns enemy units into zombies when you kill them with this weapon. So pretty good weapon. Seems pretty powerful. That's 26 magic damage repeating. So you can do 26 times 3, 78 damage. Quite a bit of damage right there. I would never sell this for 112 gold. That seems like seems pretty silly. Yaka's Fury is a reference to a character that's been in previous games. Yaka was, I think, a Wizard King, so this must be an event from an event that has to do with him and his followers or um, something along those lines. I really like that this is a 3 hex line attack. Those have been some of my favorite attacks for a long time. It lets you have a little bit of extra range. Don't think it says, yeah, it says maybe it can hit 1 tile away, so it's not like you can shoot from hexes 7 to 9 away from you, like with previous line abilities, like Deadeyes could do that, and I think the Sphinxes in Age of Wonders 3 could do that. It's pretty cool being able to set multiple units on fire with one attack. It's nice that it's not like just a general AoE around a hex. It's just a 3-line hex because it seems pretty powerful, and it lets you kind of like take advantage of positioning that human players are less likely to do. But the AI seems to like setting up for you all the time. We have the Vampire Spider, which is pretty cool because I think vampires used to heal on attack. I don't see anything in here. It seems like their main gimmick is bleeding enemy units and immobilizing them. But maybe there's something in here that I'm missing about them healing when they attack. Maybe that's somewhere else in their unit description. After that, we had the one polymorph, turns non-hero enemies into a tier 1 unit. And I assume if you kill that tier 1 unit, it is the hero that unit is off the fight, so it's pretty good. If you can get rid of one of those units before they transform back into what they were originally, then you're in a pretty big you have a pretty big advantage. This can only be used once per battle, so I have to imagine unless you can reset that, um, that's that's going to be pretty game change. That well, if you can reset, it's going to be very game changing. But if you can't, it's still pretty good all by itself. It's something that you would put underneath miscellaneous. It's not a mount. So yeah, that's kind of cool. It means that you'll have a lot of abilities or a lot of other places to put things into. Phoenix reminds me of the Golden Gate and how you get the a Phoenix unit that you can build. I assume the Phoenix unit can apply something like this to other units where they come back to life with 40% of the total HP. Kind of reminds me of Last Stand in Age of Wonders Planetfall. Very good. I assume this is pretty hard to come by. It's only tier 3. I think it can go up to tier 5. And maybe items are limited to tier 1 through 4, but that would make sense based on these things we have above. They're pretty strong looking. So yeah, we've already talked a little bit about the governors, and like their whole main gimmick is like if you apply a governor to a city, then they get a little bit more income. It doesn't seem like in the grand scheme of things to food is very much, or even that production is probably more significant than the food. Um, but I believe there's more skills and things, quests that you can use to apply certain governor traits to a leader that should make a city a lot better. That would just make sense based on how they've structured things and how things have interacted in previous games. I think we can now move on to listen. He said something about trolls and ogres. Yeah, some of them allow you to like recruit things like trolls and ogres. I think that was something that I mentioned earlier, something we saw a little bit in the stream. So pretty good. They hired a troll that was like a tier 4, um, just from having access to something like this. So it seems like a quick way to get access to some pretty powerful units. So prisons and crypts, they work like you'd expect them to. You keep heroes in prisons until they die, and then they go to the crypt. You can kill them in the prison and send them to the crypt. There's a base chance that a hero will just be killed at the end of a fight, so you can't always put them in a prison. Sometimes they just go right to the crypt. But if you're playing a necromancer, that's actually a good thing, because I think you have to wait for an event in order to kill a hero in the prison, although I wouldn't be surprised if they made a button for that, for you to just execute them. That seems like something that is in other games that would just make sense if they brought it over to Age of Wonders 4. Um, and then, if you keep them in the crypt, you get some mana. If you keep them in the prison, you get some knowledge. I guess you're like interrogating them for their knowledge on magic and other things that you may be working towards. So after that, we have a couple heroes and events that they were showing off. I have a feeling there's a lot of really interesting Easter eggs that they sprinkled in here. Like for example, I'm pretty sure Sinrin, um, where is he? Is it this third one? Is it the last one? Sinrin Toliath. That seems like a name I've read before. I think that's the character from Age of Wonders 3. Anyways, yeah, if there's anything in here that you find really interesting that you want to point out to other people who are watching this video, please feel free to leave a comment below with that information. Next week, I think we might know what they're covering, but I don't see it here at a moment's glass. So yeah, I'll see you around. Have a good one.